Welcome back to Babbling by the Brook. I'm Mark Hoby, Paper Mill Playhouse's producing artistic director. Today, I am happy to have as my guest my dear friend and a Paper Mill alum who starred in our production of 1776, but also has directed some of our audience's favorite funny shows, like Lend Me a Tenor, A Comedy of Tenors, Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike, and The Producers. Please welcome Don Stephenson. Hey, Don, how are you?
Mark Hoby, thank God you're here. I had the worst dream last night. I dreamt that there was this terrible global pandemic and no one could do shows or theater, and everybody had to do these ridiculous Zoom calls, and then thank God I woke up.
Right, and now, yeah, if only, right?
Yeah, if only.
You're hilarious. Um,
Mark, normally you and I would be down at Basilico drinking at this time of day, and yet now we can't do that with this social distance thing. So
well, actually, we could as long as we sit outside.
Can we sit outside and do it?
Yeah, and actually,
I'll meet you there in 10 minutes.
Okay, fine. Let's finish this, and then we'll go.
All right. Okay.
No, oh my gosh, you're so funny. It's so good to see you. It's been a while, too long. Although we've had several phone conversations of late.
We have.
Little planning, things I'm excited about.
Yes.
So let's just back it up. We were talking in the intro about obviously the shows you've been involved with for us as a director and as an actor. I mean, I think the first time you and I actually met was probably on that production of 1776 that happened here. Is that right?
I think that's right. And that's the only show that I've ever acted in at Paper Mill. I've
directed. Because you were not good, so we didn't invite you back.
I auditioned and was completely rejected numerous times.
That's not true.
And I have an audition coming up, and I'm sure, I won't even get a call back.
It's a Zoom audition.
It's a Zoom audition. That's right. Yes. I did 1776, and I loved that production. I thought it was a really great. I love that show, as I think most people do. It's very patriotic, and I played John Adams, and I loved the part. And I thought it was an all-star cast, with Bob Cuccioli and John Shuck and Carrie O'Malley and Kevin Early and Jim Barber, all of these great people. And it's a wonderful part. And I did a lot of research. I read the John Adams biography by David McCullough, and I was completely into it. And it's one of my fondest acting experiences is doing that part at Paper Mill. I just absolutely loved it. And those people on that stage, it's a big cast of guys and just the two women. Griffin Matthews, I forgot, was in it. And he played the courier and sang the wonderful Mama Look Sharp, I remember. Wonderful. And you're up there the whole time with all of those guys. And I remember looking around at the guys, and they were always right with me. Any guy I looked at during the show, always staring right at me, right with me. And I just thought that they were the greatest group and so dedicated to doing that show. I thought Gordon did a wonderful job. Josh Rhodes was the choreographer. Yeah. And I just thought it was a wonderful production, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I just loved it.
I love it too. I love that production too. In fact, Gordon was just here working on a little project with us, and we were talking about the show. First of all, you were spectacular in that role, absolutely spectacular. And I remember we did that show in an election year, and it happened right after the inauguration. And I remember thinking either people are going to be really excited to see this show or not, or any energetic about the country or angry, depending on which way the election goes. But in any case, it was a huge success, and Gordon did a beautiful job with it. But the beauty of that show, I think, is that it is so well constructed that we all go in knowing what the ending is. We know that they signed the Declaration, but the tension builds so strong every night. You're on the edge of your seat, wondering whether or not it's going to happen. Right?
I think that's true. And, Peter Stone did that twice. That's quite a hat trick, I think. And he did it with Titanic as well, which I was in.
Yeah.
So the ship is going to sink, and yet you're sitting there wondering what's going to happen. They're going to sign the declaration, and yet you're wondering, are they going to sign the declaration? And I talked to him about that one time, and I said, Peter, he was a wonderful guy, and I said, how did you do that? How did you do it? And not only did you do it, you did it twice. And he goes, everybody knows what's going to happen, but they don't know how.
Interesting.
And so I always thought that was the answer. At least that was the answer he gave me. He goes, you don't know how.
It's true. And it's that suspenseful buildup to both those climactic moments when the ship goes down finally, and when they actually put the quill to the paper and sign their names. And while we're talking about that, we mentioned in the intro your directing credits, and I just want to spout off a few of your performance credits on the Broadway: The Producers, Gentleman's Guide to Love, and Murder, Parade, Dracula by Jeeves, Titanic, Private Lives, Rock of Ages, Wonderful Town, Pardon My English, and The Bandwagon, and on and on. But so it's interesting that you say that, because you started here with us, with me, under my tenure as actor leading that amazing company, and then have moved into, I just think of you, not just, but I think of you primarily as a director now. So you've been on both sides of the table, and especially even talking about Titanic, you performed in Titanic and then directed it. I remember
Right.
You invited
That's
me
right.
up to the Hangar Theater, yeah?
The Hangar, right.
Up in Ithaca, beautiful
Ithaca, yes, indeed.
Ithaca.
That was the premiere of that new 20-actor version, chamber version, which I
Right.
cooked up, and now is being done all around. Spending that much time, I guess, 2.5 years doing the show, from the original and creating that show, I knew it, when you know one really, really well, and it had always percolated in my head, and it was a large production. That initial production,
Yeah.
lots of people, big band, big set, and it was so large that it made it hard for theaters to do, hard to pay for all of those elements. And so I kept thinking, is there a way? I love the show, I love the score. Is there a way to do it a little differently? And eventually, that's what we came up with, a smaller way to do the show. Now, obviously, 20 actors is still a big show, but not as big. And a way to do it with a different kind of set, a different kind of take, a lot of cuts. And I knew some of the stuff that had been cut and was restored, slightly tweaking it here and there. And now the show's able to be done, I think, more often because of that version.
And it always had an incredible score. I think the album won a Grammy, I think.
It did.
Yeah.
That's right.
The score was sweeping and emotional and spectacular, but you're right. Just first of all, when you say Titanic, you think enormous, right? And that production was huge, and I think people, thought, oh, well, it'll never get produced again. And I know a couple of people did it in a concert version, but your version was fully staged, just intimate.
That's
and
right.
still very moving and successful. I remember and gripping, watching that, and you still got caught up in all of those different characters' stories, and brought along on the journey, but just in a more concise and efficient way.
That's right. I always sort of thought of it as doing the show in a close-up, as opposed to pulling back into sort of a master shot, really getting in close and zooming in. And I hope, my hope was that you would really get to know the characters more and get more invested in them than you might have in a larger, grander, bigger production. Because, if the ship is empty and it sinks, no one cares. It's really got to be because of the people that are on it. I guess that's why we still talk about it, all of these 100 years later or so. And that was always my goal. The other idea that I had that I liked was that the score could sound like it was being played by the ship's band.
I remember.
Very, very small and mainly strings, so it's Wallace Hartley, who was the band leader on the Titanic, and his band are playing the show. I thought that was an interesting way to do it. Not that I don't love the original, of course, I was in it and I do, and all of that brass and all of those huge sounds. But I thought that the music was so beautiful that if you came at it from a different way, almost a softer, gentler way, it could have a real impact. And I think it did.
I think I remember you telling me that, and I think it absolutely did. And it also feels then more human, you know. And I remember talking to Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty about the smaller version of Ragtime that we did here many years ago after the huge production that was in New York, highly successful. But we did a very stripped down small version, and they said the same thing that you did, that the character stories and the audience relationship to those people and the music somehow was heightened because that's really what you were focusing on. You know, you can sometimes get distracted by huge sets moving in and out and all of that.
Right.
Theater, like you said, there's no theater if we don't care about those people, if they're not telling their stories.
That's
So
right. And I think the audience, you know, obviously that's an amazing movie that James Cameron did and all of those effects that you can do. But, you know, the great thing about the theater is that hopefully the audience will fill in with their own imagination what isn't there.
yeah,
And that's I love that. And I always, you know, when I direct shows, I always come back to that. I always think, you know, do we really need to have that? If it's a show that lends itself to that, I prefer that sort of aesthetic, you know,
I
where
do
the
too.
audience fills it in, you know, without having to build the, you know, the wall or the ship or the whatever the thing is, you know, they'll see it.
They'll do it. They'll do it for you.
They'll do it
Uh,
for you.
but so what prompted you to make the move from actor to director? What happened? How did that come about?
I never, I mean, I still do a lot of acting. I still act whenever anybody will have me at Paper Mill or anywhere else. And, you know, and so I don't really ever feel like I've made a decision to do one over the other. I'm not like I have retired from acting, you know. I love acting and I still want to do it. I love television acting. I love theater acting. But I have always directed. I started when I was in college, and I took a directing scene class, you know, and you picked a scene from some show and you directed it, and that was your in class. So I did that, and then I got the opportunity from that show. I remember it was The Desperate Hours, and I don't know if you know that show, but it was by Joseph Hayes, and Paul Newman and Carl Malden did it on Broadway back in the 50s. And it's all about these three prisoners who escape from prison and take a family captive and hide out in the home. And so Humphrey Bogart did the movie, and so I was always a big Paul Newman fan, and so that's how I knew the title. And I looked it up, and I was like, I'll do this for my scene class. That's probably got some good scenes with Paul Newman and Carl Malden. That's what I'll do. And I liked it, and then I was able to do the whole production because we had a theater students association at my school. I went to the University of Tennessee, and you could direct a full show in the little black box theater. So I picked The Desperate Hours because I had done a scene from it. So I did the whole show, and I found that I had a knack for it. And it's funny, I still do it exactly the same way I did all those years ago. I'll get the script and I'll go find a place to sit down, and I just start to read it and read it and read it, and then suddenly they just start to move around. The characters start to move around. I'm like, well, he's going over here, I'll write that down. And I think I'm sort of playing all the parts. You
Yeah.
know, I think that that's what I'm doing. I'm like, and it doesn't matter whether it's gender, anything like that. It's just I become everybody, and I just start crossing. So I'm sort of acting the whole thing out, and then write down what I do in every part that I'm playing. So the thing that I like about directing is that it's really, really creative, you know, and probably more creative than acting, because you know it's the whole show is yours in a way. You know, it's your cake. You just have to make sure it's baked and ready to be eaten by that day. You know, when Mark Kobe says this is the day everyone's eating the cake, you got to have the cake. The cake's got to be ready. So I like that, but you know, it allows me to play parts that I probably wouldn't be cast in. You know, I've directed Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I don't know that anybody would let me play Brick. But when I direct it, see, I get to play Brick, and I think I know how to do it. You know, that doesn't mean that anyone would let me. So in that way, it's really, really fun. I think that you know, acting is very myopic. It's all about me and my glove and Mark, this glove doesn't feel right. These shoes feel funny. I need a different handle on my cane. And directing is much more the whole picture, as you well know. All of it is your responsibility. So it's creative in a completely different way. And it, your ego is stroked in a completely different way. If you're playing John Adams, they walk right past Gordon Greenberg to you and they say, my God, that was the greatest thing I've ever seen. Even though I'm probably doing everything that Gordon thought of,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
they go right to me. And the same for me. If I'm directing, you know, a show, they go right past me, right to David Josephsberg and say, my God, you're brilliant. And, you know, even though I thought of everything that he's doing. So it's that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's a
Yes,
different kind.
100%. And I think your explanation of the myopic as an actor and actress thinking about how everything affects me personally and what I do. This is my track. And as a director, you have to zoom out and you have to really be the puppet master of everybody, including the designers, right? Sometimes the playwright, if they're in the room. I also say that 50% of my job always as a director is being everyone's therapist, making sure that one, everybody has everything they need to succeed and that everybody's okay, right? You good? No, you're good. Everything's good, right? But it's a different skill set and it's a different kind of enjoyment. Like you say, as an actor, when the curtain comes down and the audience is on their feet, you know you've given that performance. But as a director, you're responsible for the whole thing. And so you take a different kind of joy in the success or the failure of that moment, that night, right?
Well, it sort of feels like, I mean, you and I are both fathers. And so it's that kind of pride, you know, when your child does well, you
Yeah.
know, it's your show and it feels great. And it sort of feels more like that to me, the, you know, parental pride as opposed to, by God, I sang that song great. You
Yeah.
know, it's a different kind of thing, and both are wonderful, and both are
They feed
fun.
your soul in a different
Yeah,
way.
totally. So they really do a different kind of thing. And you know, people say, "Well, what do you like to do more?" And I always say, and I'm sort of joking, but I'm sort of not joking. I always say, whichever one I'm doing, I wish I was doing the other.
So my question to you is, do you think directing has made you a better actor and a better company member? Like
Absolutely.
yeah, in what,
Absolutely.
how is it?
Very smart of you. Yes. So when you when you direct and when you have directed and you go back to being an actor in the company, your experience on how you've interacted with actors and how they've behaved will show you how to behave.
Yeah.
So if you've had a difficult situation, you will never do that because you've been on that side, you know, you with as the director and had to deal with it. And I think it also makes you a better actor because you know the pressures that the director is under to make the show happen. And so when they give you a note, you say, yeah, I'll do it. You know, and if you need to talk about it later, that's fine. But, you know, the directors are moving usually quickly and with purpose. And
Yeah.
it, so much of the job, I think, is just to say yes and try to make it work as best you can because there's probably a reason. And then, you know, obviously you can hash it out later, but, you know, facilitate what the director is asking for and needs because they think about it, as you just said, they've thought about the whole. You have not thought about the whole. You're only thought about playing Leo Bloom, you
Right.
know, or whatever the part is. You're not thinking about the whole whammy. You're only thinking about your little part of it, as you should. So I always try to do exactly what the director asks as quickly as possible because that's what I want. So I can see if it works and whether I need to change it or not when I'm the director, right? And you know, I was lucky enough. I worked on that revival of Private Lives with that Howard Davies directed, the British director, and that Alan Rickman and Lindsay Duncan were in. It's a wonderful production of it. And I remember Howard, who I didn't know very well, just had a way about him of always. You got the feeling that he was with you and he was going to help you figure it out. That the two of you were a team
Mhm.
And together you would figure out the problems, the riddles, the clues of acting the part. And you never felt like, oh, he's going to hurt me, he's going to wound me in some way, he's going to say something. It was always, I'll help you, I'm with you, I'm in the boat with you, I'm on your team, and together we're playing this part, you know. And that really taught me. And he wasn't touchy feely or like a cuddly guy, you know. He But that was the way he dealt with the people, and it really, really resonated with me that that's what the actors need. And you know, just being a director, when I'm the actor in a show, I have no idea what to do. Just because I have directed shows, when I'm the one up there and I've got the script in my hand and trying to remember the lines and remember the blocking or the dancing or whatever, I need help. Everybody needs help. You don't know what to do. And acting is a very vulnerable position to be in, and you need help. And hopefully you're with someone that you can trust and that will help you figure it out, because, you know, doing these parts, it's like being a detective, right? And you need help to figure out, who is he, why, when, how, you know. And so I try to do that. But when I'm an actor, I need as much help as anybody. I have no idea what to do. You sort of have blinders, I think, because of the fear of, like, you're the one up there, you're trying to do the lines, you're trying to sing the song, you're trying to hit the notes, you're trying to do the steps, and you become more and more myopic. You can't think clearly. You know, you need that other person to go, it's just right here. You're close, just right here. Go here, and you're okay. You know, so I need it as when I'm acting as much as anybody else.
I
I
think that,
can't
yeah.
do it myself to myself. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, of course not. I mean, that's why it's got to be a collaborative process. But something you said, the word you brought up, and I've been thinking about it for the last couple of minutes while you were talking, is trust. And as a director, I always think my goal at the beginning of every process is to let them know that they can trust me, right? And so I find that the simplest way to do that is just make a decision. Like when a question gets asked, they say, should I stand up or sit down for this line? I say, you should sit down. Absolutely. Just sit down and say it. You can change your mind. Nothing's written in stone. But if you are definitive and they learn to trust you, then you can change your mind and everybody becomes more creative. And then later in the process, and you know what happens, you're in tech and there's a million, as a director, you're out there and everybody has a million questions for you. And when an actor says, can I stand up on this line? You want to be able to say, no, I need you to sit. And then them to go, okay, you must have a reason for that. And I'm not going to ask you all the many things that went into that decision because I trust you, right? It's about that trust. But you also said, director wants to get to it quickly and move on. But I always say, Don Stephenson's rehearsal schedule looks like this. Day 1, block act 1. Day 2, block act 2. And then we'll start running the show and then we'll take it apart. But that is the way the school you come from.
It really is. It really is. And you know, the reason is because that's what I like as an actor. I really just do it exactly the way I would want it done to me. And when you're an actor up there, this is me talking, I can't speak for everybody, but I want to tell me where to stand. You know, I want to know the notes. I need to know my words. I need to know where to stand, when to cross. Give me the whole thing. And then
Yeah.
I can slowly ramp up and fill it in, you know, fill it with life. But
Yeah.
give me the skeleton, give me the sort
The
of
map.
etch a sketch. Yeah, give me the
Yeah.
map. And so I try to do that as quickly as possible when I'm directing, to give them the map. And then they'll fill it in once they sort of know where the parameters are. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going, well, should I cross left or right? I'll tell you, cross left. And then later, you're absolutely right. If you think it's better to cross right when you feel better and you know the character better, sure, we can try crossing right. I'll say yes. I'll get you back left eventually. But, you know, I think the more repetitions that the actors have at it, the better the show becomes because they feel more and more confident. and they feel more and more. I think acting is about doing. You got to do
Yeah.
it. You can't talk about it. You got to get up and do it.
That
And
is
if
not
you
that.
do, you'll have confidence. If you leave it to the actors, myself especially, I'll go straight down center. That's where I think I should go. I'll go down here and I'll stand here and everyone can move around me. But the
Right.
director knows they got to make picture, 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 picture.
Yeah.
And so yes, I like to get up and do it. And then everybody starts to know what they're doing. And in a couple of weeks, they'll have it. Like the feeling, I know you've done long runs in a show. You know how you get it in your body and your body knows which way to go. You stop thinking about it. I try to get to that feeling and fake it as quickly as possible. Obviously no one's run the show for a year when you open, but if you've done it enough and you can go over and over and over it, it gets a little bit of muscle memory, and then suddenly it's not like acting, they're living it.
Yeah.
And
Living it.
it's alive. And
Right.
so that's what I like when I'm the actor. And so that's why I think I did it that way and do it that way as a director, because that's what I would want. That's
I also
how I
find
like
that,
it.
yeah, I also find that, and especially when you get to that technical part of the process too, I always say get through it, get it up on its feet. I think it's easier to change things when people have the whole picture. You've done some incredible productions for us, Producers, which was great, Vanya, Sonia, Masha, and Spike, which was, a wonderful comedy, but, and great, great talk about characters and just craziness. But the two shows that I especially love were Lend Me a Tenor, A Comedy of Tenors, which you did for us. And the thing that I love about it, which we didn't plan really at the beginning, was that we reunited that same cast. I think, was it 4 years in between or 3 years in between those productions?
It was 3.
And they're slightly different. There's one character written in and one character written out. But the basic thing was to take that Lend Me a Tenor company, all the same actors, and bring them back into a new play, but the same basic, situation, and have them revisit. I mean, what was that whole process like for you? Because to watch it for me was just a joy, and I know our patrons loved it too.
The joy is the perfect word to describe it for me too. When I remember where I was visiting my parents in Tennessee when you called me and asked me to direct Lend Me a Tenor, and I was just over the moon, thrilled and so happy because I had played Max before, and when you do a show, you really, really know it. So I knew the show, and I just love it. It's one of my favorite, maybe my favorite. So when you called, it was like, would you like to direct your favorite play at this fantastic theater? I was like, yes, sir, I would. And so putting together the first one was really, I have to say, people always ask, what's your favorite? What's your favorite? One of my two favorite experiences was 1776 as an actor at Paper Mill and Lend Me a Tenor as a director at Paper Mill. They really are one of my two favorite experiences, and I've had a lot of good ones, so you called me, and so I started to put it together, thinking of all of the funny people that I know from all of the different shows that I've done, from Titanic to Producers to Death Takes a Holiday. Jill was in that with me. So I knew the kind of funny that it needed. And it was just a joy from the first day on. When you work with people of that caliber, it makes it easy. If you have an idea, then John Tracy Egan, he can show you the idea, and then you can say, yes, that's good, or no, I got another one, or he has one. And so that way you're really working at a high level and on a tightrope where no one is going to fall. And it's heaven. And then when you call, we found out, I think, at some point in rehearsal or after we opened, that Ken had written a sequel to Lend Me a Tenor. And so I was like, immediately, I was like, we need to do a reading. We've got, everyone's here. And it didn't work out for schedule. I don't think he was done, or he had a draft. And originally it was called Tito's Revenge, was the first draft of Comedy of Tenors. And so when you called and said, we're doing it, of course, I was like, well, getting the band back together, there's no other way to do it. And luckily, everybody jumped at it. And you're right, most of the characters are there, a couple aren't. And I've always wished that I could do both of those shows in rep. So, sort of like the Harry Potter shows, where you see one in the matinee and then in the evening you see the other one and the next day. And you slightly change the hotel rooms from Cleveland to Paris. And I just thought, wouldn't that be fun for an audience to see the same cast do that, in the same day? You could see the two different productions, with the schedule permitted. So I love those plays, and I think that they have such a heart to them on top of the funny. So one of the best compliments I've ever gotten, I think, was from Lend Me a Tenor, when a woman came up to me afterwards and said, I loved Lend Me a Tenor. I just was crying in the end. And I thought, that's exactly what I wanted to happen, because if you get invested in Max and his desire to be a singer, and the fact that he pulls it off in the end should be really sort of heart-wrenching. And of course it's funny, and of course it's silly, and of course there's hijinks and door slamming and all of those fun things, but that's got to be what it's about. And I thought we pulled that off, and that really was the ball game for me. And I think the second show also does it. Again, it's funny, it ends with Max there, listening to his newborn baby and and it's that feeling, of comedy, obviously always having some sort of reality to it, but there's pathos in all of those characters. And to be able to go back and forth within a show and have that is just heaven on earth. And I always say it's like Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, you have to have the everybody back to do part 2. And if Ken ever writes a third one, I'd want to have everybody and come back and do number 3. What hotel room in what city are we at? And here we go. There's Tito and there's Max and there's Saunders, and let's go, I just think I just love those shows. And I was so proud of the productions, and I love those actors and those designers. Almost all of them were the same. And the stage management team was the same. And, that's so important in a show like that. The stage manager is really one of the actors. And I know Gary Mickelson was the stage manager for both of those. Him calling the cues, is as important. His comic timing, when the doors open, when they slam, he's doing all of that. And so those people who are part of the show, often people don't know it, but it's huge what they do. They can make or break the show.
One of the things I remember you talking about when we were casting the first time, you said in your experience as both a director and an actor in farce, right, which these shows are with the door slamming and the timing and the physical comedy, you said that actors with experience in musicals do better in farce because the timing is musical. The jokes have a rhythm. Even the door slams, I remember you talking about. There were rehearsals for door slams, remember, to make sure that they acted as the exclamation point, the period, the whatever that was. It was all about the rhythm, and there's a musical sensibility that certain actors, and they can be comedic actors, live or feel, but that musical theater people who live in that rhythm all the time with dance get it about a farce and a comedy.
Well, that's exactly right. Like the door slams, as you said, are a period or an exclamation point. It's part of the sentence. It's part of the line, and the rhythm, I think, is what Ken has built in. So if you say ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da slam. So we would rehearse, even though, of course, you don't have doors in the rehearsal room. It's just wide open.
You had one door.
They would say, the actors would say, I would have them say the word slam out loud. And so when we got to the set and it had doors, they knew where it went, And so I try to alleviate any of that stress. Was like, where exactly should I slam the door? If you've been saying slam for 3 weeks, you know where the slam goes because it's part of the line. And you're absolutely right.
It's the rewind that happens at the end of Lend Me a Tenor, where they reenact the whole show in like 3 minutes. I do remember that because there's no dialogue. There's music underneath it, and they're running around, doing a dumb show. But I remember in the rehearsal room, it was just, slam, slam, because there were no doors. But oh my gosh, that was hilarious. So funny.
But also in that sequence, the dumb show as we called it, like so many times, like you would want the door slams to be on certain beats of the music that was playing underneath it. Da 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 slam, da 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 slam, da 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 slam, slam, slam. And I mean, people who do musicals and that sing and dance, they're gonna know, they're gonna feel the beat. You can say, take it from the ba 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 ba, and they're gonna know what that is. Not that there aren't wonderful actors who don't do musicals. Of course there are, and I'm sure they would be wonderful in farce and back from Moliere, right? I mean, it goes all the way back. But I do find that people that do musicals, that do those kind of shows, there's a certain shorthand and a certain ease that comes with it. There's a musicality to any show. You do Death of a Salesman, it has a rhythm, right?
Mhm.
You do Lend Me a Tenor, it has a rhythm. They all do. And I guess the job of the director is to help the actors find the rhythm and then do it the next night, right?
I do remember, I think it was the final dress rehearsal early on in the show when somebody slammed the door and the doorknob fell off. And they were tried to cover for a while.
They did.
I remember,
I do
but
too.
they had to.
Yes, I think that's on YouTube is like this, great stage catastrophe. It's not like but yes,
Can't do
and
it.
I thought, in Noises Off, there's a gag, another farce that I've done several times. There's a gag where like the doorknob comes off in one of the actors' hands, and he can't open the door, and he finally gets it back in and open. And I thought, when you want it to happen, it's really, really hard to get that doorknob in Noises Off to come out and then go back in and work and open the door. But then it was happening for real when I didn't want it to happen, and Lend Me a Tenor. And I thought, right when you need it, you can't have it.
No, it's a comedy of errors, right? Comedy of tenors.
Totally,
But,
totally.
well, I would, first of all, I could talk to you for hours. We never even touched on producers, you revisiting that and
Well, yeah.
all of that. And I would love to talk more about that. But I think what I'd really love to do, you and I talked about this briefly, is I would love to bring back one of those companies or both of those companies to revisit some of Comedy of Tenors with Lend Me a Tenor as a gift to our supporters, because people still talk about how funny that was. And I honestly have not laughed as hard in a theater. Like I had to hold myself in on opening night because I thought people are going to think I'm trying to get, I'm overacting because I'm the
Right.
artistic director. But
Right.
it was great. It would be great to just reunite everybody.
I would love to do that, and I know the cast would too. And God knows we all need it. I always say, if you can come to the theater, you come to Paper Mill, and you see a show like any of those that I've done there, and to forget your troubles, for an hour and a half or a couple of hours. I mean, that's really, really a great thing in the service, and we all need that. And the world will be out there, when it's over, and you can turn the radio on or go home and turn the TV on. It'll all be there. But to sit there and, as you said, have that kind of feeling of really, really open laughing, it's good for the soul and really therapeutic. And I think we all need that. God knows I love it. I mean, people say, "What's your goal?" And I said, "I want, the EMTs to have to come in and carry people out. They've passed out from laughing. They can't they can't breathe. And those shows are so wonderful because you have a laugh and then another one will come and then the next thing you know, you're just I'm overwhelmed with laughter. And is there a better feeling?
No,
Oh,
there's
it's
not.
the
It
best.
really is. It's the kind of joy and experience, and especially live with a group of other people experiencing at the same time. You can sit at home on your couch and laugh at a sketch on Saturday Night Live or a funny movie. It's not the same thing when there are, as we talk about, waves of laughter that roll from the stage out across the audience and then back up. It's that kind of connection and communication that doesn't happen anywhere but in the live theater. So listen, someday we'll get back to that. So hopefully
We'll get
someday
back to it.
soon.
We'll get back to it eventually. We have to, and
Yeah,
we need it. We have to be together
yeah,
and experience things together, and that's human. That's being a human.
it is. So we'll do one virtually, and then once we get back into having live theater, we'll have you back either on stage or in the audience directing, either one. You're
I'll
welcome.
need help when I'm on stage. I need you to tell me left or right, Mark.
I'll tell you left until I change my mind.
Yes, sir. And I'll say, yes, sir. I'll do it.
Thanks, Don. Great talking to you. Thanks.
So good to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Well, that's it for this week. Thank you again for tuning into Babbling by the Brook and for supporting Paper Mill Playhouse. Join us again next week when I catch up with director and writer Gordon Greenberg, whom you'll know from our productions of Holiday Inn, Pirates, and more. See you then.